On today's episode of Boundary Breakers, I sit down with Jason Clement. Jason is the CEO and co-founder of the Sports Facilities Companies. Jason's company partners with communities across the country to help build and manage sports and recreation facilities. They started this business in 2003 and now have almost 3,000 employees nationwide. I really enjoyed this conversation. Jason and I share a passion for sports, and in particular, the positive impact that sports can have on our youth. Jason's company is making a tremendous impact in communities across the country. They've been involved in 2,000 projects to build sports and recreation facilities nationwide, and they're really just getting started. I really think you're going to enjoy this discussion. Boundary Breakers is brought to you by Carter and Clark. Love to hear about sort of, where you grew up, your background, and sort of how you found your way here.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me again. And what you mentioned in terms of the people that you've had on your podcast and get to talk to is rare air. So I appreciate and humbled to be part of it. My background, I'm from Marshalltown, Iowa, population 25,000 in Iowa. Great place to be from, great people. We grew up in a family of sports participants. My dad was the high school baseball coach, so I grew up on the baseball field as a bat boy. Learned some hijinks from high school players and whatnot as they picked on me and my two younger brothers and younger sister. I joke that, we got better athletically as we got younger in my family, and I was the oldest. So that tells you where I was in the pecking order. But there's truth to that. I was, I was a good high school player in the sports that I played. Baseball was the sport of choice. But we played everything growing up. And as we got younger, my next younger brother, he's the hitting coach now at Ole Miss. He played college baseball. My sister played college softball and was the MVP of her team. And then my youngest brother was third overall in the major league draft in 2005 as well. So I'm serious when I say we got better as we got younger. But, as I reflect on it, I got just as much out of my sports experience as the rest of my family. Character development, learning how to win, lose, lifelong relationships, all of the things that we know inherently sport provides for kids, especially during those formative years. That was really important for me. And our family's still very close, as a result of it. And, as you heard, it's the profession of choice still for a number of us. So it's been really fun.
That's great. Yeah. So sports all the way through. Sports definitely in your dreams. Or in your genes. So you didn't play professionally, right? So you chose a little bit of a different route, became an architect, right?
I did.
So how'd you choose that profession?
Well, you just heard my family's professions. They say if you can't play, you coach. I guess if you can't coach, you design, develop, and manage sports complexes. And that's where I landed. Growing up, I always had an interest in buildings and how they were put together. And the love of sport, to your points, in the DNA, sports stadium, and that was really interesting to me. I remember, my parents' kitchen table, drawing stadiums and whatnot in junior high and in high school. And, when it became clear to me that, my sports career was done, I had an opportunity to walk on at Iowa State, which is where I went. I call it the Harvard of the Skunk River Valley. But, it's a great architectural program. And, that's what I got into. I knew it was time to turn the page. Chose not to walk on because architecture's a pretty taxing degree. And I knew when I graduated, I wanted to get into sports architecture. So my internships led to that throughout the career. And I ended up moving down to Kansas City to work for a sports architecture firm. It was great. I got recruited and was blessed to be hired by some of the best in the business. And at a young age, was given an opportunity to manage projects, stadiums and arenas. At the time, it was Mizzou's new basketball arena, Oklahoma's football stadium was going through a massive renovation at the time. The Naval Academy was renovating its football stadium. And these were projects that I got to work on and in some cases lead in partnership with athletic directors and head coaches, again, at a really young age. I was blessed. Randy Bradar and Tom Wagner We're the owners of that firm, and they're kind of Kansas City royalty as it relates to sports architecture. And frankly, I was there we're doing a project right now that we're developing in Overland Park, Kansas. So I was there yesterday and ended up talking to the architects there who were doing that project and just sharing war stories about those guys, from back in the day, because they're so well known. So it was just a real blessing to be able to work and, cut my teeth professionally doing that right out of school.
Gotcha. So I didn't realize that. So you didn't just want to be an architect. You specifically got into it knowing, or at least wanting to design sports facilities from the very beginning.
Yeah, it was great. And what was interesting during those years, 9/11 happened in 2001, and the first Saturday after 9/11, where they opened up sports again, I was at the Naval Academy for a game. Because we were working on the project, and it was wild. I mean, just wild because of the security measures that were new, at that point in time. But you know how it is. You look back, just so grateful for those foundational years professionally and what you learn, and you think about the mentors and the coaches that you have. I actually, I haven't worked with those guys for 20 plus years because we founded SFC, and we're off to the races. Right. And I actually went back last year to a George Strait concert at Arrowhead Stadium, and nice. I sat next to Randy, and he joked, he's like, you're older now than I was when we hired you, back then. And,
wow.
And just grateful for the lifelong relationships that you get to build along the way.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's, and it also, the fact that you worked with these folks and you still maintain a good relationship with them to this day, that speaks volumes, right? Obviously, you didn't burn any bridges when you decided to leave, and so that speaks to your professional character, just sort of on its own. Well, so take us back to, I guess, 2002, 2003, right? When you are considering sort of going out on your own. Walk us through how that came about and what you were thinking about and what was going through your mind.
Yeah, so we, stadiums, arenas, I was excited about it. They were the sexy projects. And I was given at the time, it felt like a Little League complex in North Kansas City to lead. And I was not excited about it, young punk, immature, all those things. But of course you take it on. And I remember going to the county commission meeting to share the site plan. And it was good, and it passed, and the commissioners were there, and the developer, who was our client, also hired a consultant to help on the operational development of that complex. And he had just opened up his own indoor sports facility in Detroit Metro, Michigan. And he got up after me and just shared the impact. It was less than a year old. It was 2002. He opened it in 2001. And he was sharing the impact that facility and that complex, that operation was making within that community. And just what struck me was the way that dads, specifically in an area in which a lot of dads weren't engaged in their family, how dads were connecting with kids and families and interacting in a positive and healthy way through sport and through youth sports. And there were some unique design elements that he did to, keep parents away from officials and from kids during the games. Some things that we still carry through in the way that we're designing and developing complexes today. But it was like a bolt of lightning struck, in that moment to say, hold on, this is where I'm meant to be. I wasn't excited going into it, and I came out absolutely fired up about the impact and the difference that you can make in millions of people's lives by building facilities that facilitate positive and healthy outcomes that I had been blessed with the opportunity to participate in, growing up. And when you layer that in with something that just on the side I'm very passionate about, and that's fatherlessness and dads being engaged and the society. And I know that's not why we're on the call on the podcast here, but
no, that was important.
But so many of our societal issues, if you just look at them, and I could list them all from suicide to incarceration to all of those things. The one thing in common is the lack of a dad and male relationship. And by the way, that's not taking anything away from mom's role, because moms are the best. But in that moment, it was like, boom, there's something here. So I asked that consultant at the time to go grab a burger, for dinner afterward and just pick his brain. And he said, man, I am getting calls all the time for people to want to develop these things and do what we've done. I think I'm going to start a consultancy for this. Are you in? You interested? And I said, you bet. I'm very interested in that. And we then met another partner at the time he introduced me to, and there are the three that started SFA at the time. We kind of moonlit doing it for a couple of years, and I got into facility management down in Texas with another great mentor of mine, the CEO there, Tracy Doan, who taught me business, because in architecture school they don't teach you business, and taught me business over those couple of years in facility management, corporate real estate. This dates me. Clients were Nokia, AOL, ConocoPhillips, Blockbuster Video. And we help with their facility management, and at the right time, time to go out on our own and lose the paycheck and go build something special. And in 2005 is when we said, let's take the entrepreneurial leap and let's go for it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So I've got a million thoughts going through my head and a lot of questions that I'd love to ask. And I don't want to get us too far sidetracked, but I've had a lot of folks on the podcast in and around the sports community, like Brandon Lowry, who was a professional soccer player who works. He's got an amazing business, and I recently sat down with two folks that are involved with this wave pool technology, right? And we had some fascinating discussions about residential or real estate development and sort of what the golf course. Well, first of all, what the chairlift did to development, like in and around ski resorts, and then what the golf course did with regard to developments. And they're now sort of seeing with this wave pool technology that they're developing these communities around this new wave pool technology. And it reminds me a lot of sort of some of your inspiration. There's a lot of similarities in terms of recognizing the impact of a sports venue that a community can sort of rally around, and the young kids can find character and discipline and a lot of things that may be lacking, or that they may, instead of turning to drugs or violence, they can put their time and effort into doing more constructive things, whether it's a basketball court or a skate park.
Right.
Had the CEO of USA Skateboarding on recently, who was talking about how skate parks are so influential. So to me, I think it's really inspiring and interesting. I'm also a big. I played a ton of sports growing up. Played into college. I've got 5 kids. They're all playing sports. I mean,
you're invested.
Yes, absolutely. But the lessons that you mentioned earlier, right? The lessons that just like the foundational lessons that sport teaches, I think they're very difficult to learn, for children to learn in other ways, right? Because as a child playing sport, you get to learn by you actually experience, like letting a teammate down, or what it feels like to win a championship, and things that if you're sitting in a classroom, or if you're trying to tell your kids about, it just sort of goes in one ear and out the other. And so I think it's fantastic that, look, obviously you knew that you wanted to do, you wanted to design arenas, sports complexes, et cetera, but then you really sort of found your passion with how that interacts with and connects with communities.
Absolutely. No, it's exactly right. And I'm so grateful for it. And what you mentioned, we're pretty sports agnostic and venue agnostic. We've got ice complexes, we've got ropes courses, we've got working with some wave pools that are coming online right now. We manage a skate park as part of our Panama City Beach location that we manage, and then the traditional stuff as well. But yes, learning how to win, learning how to lose at school and come back and turn the page, and to borrow a quote from Ted Lasso, be a goldfish, right? And do all of those things.
I love it.
It's so critical and fun to be able to do. And we get to build the venues and buildings and manage the buildings and venues that facilitate these outcomes. It's kind of a pinch me moment when we get to be able to do that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's interesting, and I'm glad we get to share it, because I don't think it's generally well known or what generally known at all that this is a obviously a multi-billion-dollar industry that there are lots of different players in. So what was the vision? So in 2005, well, you guys, I guess, started it in 2003, but then 2005 really decided, all right, we're going. So what was the ultimate vision for what you guys were trying to build?
Well, we knew it was pretty unsophisticated, a sports facility management space at that time. And then it was also, it's still fragmented, but really fragmented at that point in time. And so the vision was, how can we help bring more of these facilities online with, first class operations and business sophistication to make them sustainable. And really it started with, feasibility and good planning to build new facilities online. And really that was 05 to 07, kind of how we grew from that perspective. And then when the recession hit, we had people calling us say, hey, our letters of credit are getting called, and we were marginally successful from a business and operational perspective. But now we're in trouble. And can you manage this for us? Because you've just opened up some of the most successful ones in the country, brand new. How can you do with an existing operation? And so we come in and do some optimization planning, put a strategic plan in place. They threw us the keys, and we're in the management, game. And I don't mean for it to sound as reactive and opportunistic as what I just mentioned. We knew that management was something we wanted to get into because, I had the corporate real estate facility management experience, and there were good examples in the stadium, arena, convention center, outsourced management game happening already, but nothing in this space. So the timing was interesting in that we had, learned our chops, built the operational business. The economy did what it did, and it created this opportunity for us to say yes. And, one of the things my dad always said as a coach, hey, just say yes, right? When the moment comes, be ready to say yes. And there are a lot of quotes around that, being prepared for the moment and those sorts of things. We were prepared, for the moment, and we were able to say yes and really turn these venues around. Some of them very, very, very distressed. Get them to a place where they were having operational success for those owners and facility owners. To the point, I laugh that there were a number of private ones at that point in time we were managing. They were distressed. The owners were financially fatigued. We got them stabilized and turned around and had a good management contract in place. And then they said, great, thank you for turning around. We're going to sell them because we're fatigued. And we're out of management agreement at the time. So we learned that we need to put some measures in place that if you're going to sell it, we participate, or, our contract is assigned and we continue. But
interesting.
Lessons learned along the way for sure. But really that's, the 05 to 08, 09, 2010 period was really around that sort of growth and trajectory for us during that moment.
That's really interesting. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like that at this point now you've sort of got three related entities, right? If you're developing these things on, with a partner, and then design/building and then managing. I mean, those can be three sort of different animals, if you will.
Yeah.
So do you guys have different divisions within the company that pursue those opportunities?
We do. So we have our pre-development advisory services, SFA. We have our development services, SFD, and then we have our management and operations services, SFM. And together, they're the SFC, right? Sports Facilities Companies, alphabet soup, baby. But
I love it.
That's how we structure it. And we like to say, and I hope it's pride in a good way, but we pride ourselves on just being able to fill the gaps on what that venue owner or developer needs. We don't have to be all things to all people. You heard our passion around our mission, which is to improve the health and economic vitality of the communities we serve. Mental, social, physical, spiritual health are all served well as a result of this. So wherever we can plug in to fill the gaps so that venue can be successful and make that kind of impact, we're proud to do it.
Yeah, that's great. So who's your ideal client, right? So, I mean, I guess help somebody that may not be aware or may not understand sort of community sports complexes, right? I mean, how does this, for lack of a better way to ask the question, how does this work?
Yeah. So here's how it works, and then we can back into the ideal client question a little bit here. So whether it's a private developer, whether it's a municipal, government or entity, whether it's a faith-based organization or private equity, right? Pretty wide spectrum there.
Okay.
Any of them may have a desire to develop or own a sports complex based on what their outcomes and goals are. So normally it's some balance or blend between trying to serve visitors and either bring visitors into a master plan development, mixed use development, or into a community to drive spending and sales tax or hotel tax revenue. But provide that, or just serve the local community with great programming, right? For all the reasons that we mentioned earlier, it's some balance between those two normally, no matter which of those owners they are. But it's our job to figure out what their goals and objectives are and facilitate that. And then what we do is we build the operation to go accomplish those goals.
Gotcha.
And there's always a qualitative goal and there's always a quantitative goal from a financial sustainability perspective. And so, we'll work at the beginning with any of those types of entities to build a pro forma, a financial model, an operating plan. Then we'll help, get the financing lined up and the capital. And then if necessary, we'll lead the design and the construction, through it. And we can I think right now we've got 21 projects in development in that design and construction pipeline. And we've got 80 that we're analyzing up front in the pre-development. And then once we get through that design and construction, oftentimes, we're asked to operate and manage it so that we can be accountable to, the financial modeling that we put in front. So that's how it works. And that's an ideal client relationship. And along the way, good transparent reporting and making sure that we're accomplishing the goals and the objectives they had up front. Sometimes those evolve, and we always have a great relationship with those clients to make sure that we're pivoting and adjusting the operating plan to make sure we accomplish what they're hoping for.
Yeah, gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. So there's some entity, whether it be municipality or a community, that has constituents that wants to provide a recreational facility for those constituents, right? And so you guys sort of walk them through that process. Just out of curiosity, what's the most common type of project? Is it gymnasium? Is it pools? Just curious what you guys often are working on.
Yeah, most common I'd say is some combination of a turf and court-based facility. On the indoor side, the courts really allow for ultimate flexibility, and so you're running basketball and volleyball, futsal, MMA, gymnastics, a lot of pickleball happening these days.
Oh yeah,
as you would imagine. And then you can even do some trade shows and conferences and some black tie things. And we run proms and concerts inside those venues as well. And then, on the outdoor side, whether they're diamond fields or long fields, provide flexibility for all those types of sports. That's typical. And then there are a bunch of ancillary and the next generation sports and entertainment complex has a family entertainment components, picture Dave and Buster's inside of a sports complex, right? Or ropes courses, zip lines, pretty sophisticated food and beverage operations now. And we've got a venue, the Rocky Mount Event Center in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. We're doing weddings most weekends.
Wow.
We're catering out of our F&B operation there, in addition to everything that's happening on the courts, within that model. So they're getting to be big business with a lot of moving parts and different types of operations. Similar to the way that Madison Square Garden turns over, right? These indoor sport and event centers are doing the same thing.
Gotcha. That's interesting. That's actually really helpful. So most often it's probably some type of multi-use space that you can sort of cater to a bunch of. It's not just for shuffleboard or whatever, right? It could be a lot of different things depending upon. That's really interesting. Yep. That's really interesting.
Yep. Diversity and flexibility are really important, right? Because then you can move things in and out based on the business model and the seasonality. And the goal is keep these things busy, serving as many people as possible, as often as possible.
Gotcha. And then so on the management side, you've got lifeguards, coaches, officials, scheduling, upkeep, maintenance. So okay, now I got it. Now look, thank you for going through some of the basics just to paint the picture, just to make sure that everybody sort of knows what we're talking about. All right. So now that we've got a good idea of this, so What about some, you mentioned a couple of challenges, right? But when you guys started to get this off the ground, obviously, I love this idea. I love the model. And I love just the community impact, social sort of aspect to it. But so, what were some of the big hurdles or some of the big surprises that you guys faced as you tried to start building this?
Yeah, great question. Look, building these complexes are capital intense, right? So if we, were to own, every venue that we manage right now, it was very capital intense. So we made the decision early on that we were going to be a strategic partner and a professional service firm that manages in partnership with those that want to own and deploy the capital to make it work. So that was an important pillar and decision as we were building the operating model, and it's allowed us to scale. The other thing it's allowed us to do is early on really bring the very best talent in the industry together. So when we look at the industry, inventory, space and time are really important. But something else that's really important is having good process and procedures around facility operations and being the best operators possible. The third is having the programming and the content that really make it work within these venues and provide the best service. But people, this is a personnel intense operation. And, I joke the great philosopher, HR philosopher, Biggie Smalls once said, "Mo people, mo problems." But obviously that's
one of the best around.
Yeah, that's not the way it worked, but that's the reality. And so culture is critically important. And with us, there are other people's venues, and our job is to serve their goals and objectives. So we bring our culture, and we say we win with people. We bring our culture, and it has to blend well with that client and what they're trying to accomplish in their culture based on their goals. And we learned early on there are some venue owners and clients that they just had a different sort of culture than what we had, and so we've learned who are the right fits for us as we move forward. And just because it's not the best fit from a client perspective doesn't mean anyone's a bad person. It's just not the right fit for what we're trying to build and the impact that we're trying to make as well. We believe you can balance mission and margin and do both, and we've been able to prove that out in our models. But there are some that have a different perspective as well. And so how you treat people and making sure that you bring in the right people, and early on making sure that you have the right fit. And if you don't, it's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad people or you're bad. It just means they're not the right fit for what you're trying to do and the service you're trying to provide. So I could go into details about all of that, but you learn that as you build and as you grow. And those were some of the challenges as we move forward. And I'd add one more, and that is, as we've grown to the scale that we're at now, it's really important that we foster a culture of innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurialism. Each one of these markets that we're in is unique. Each one of these facilities is different that we work with. And so, as you grow, you need to put systems and controls in place so that you manage other people's money really well, that you make sure you're, putting the right HR things in place, that you're treating kids and families safely and in a healthy way. So you have to have these systems in place. At the same time, you don't want to put those things are non-negotiable, but you don't want to put other things in place that stifle innovation and entrepreneurship and, the nimbleness that's required for these places to be successful. So, we've learned that, and we've tweaked that model as we've continued to grow, so that as we bring in the very best people, and believe me, we have the very best people in the industry, I'm blessed to work alongside them, that we don't shackle them, and they're able to go do and be the best they can be as they build and grow these operations and serve people. Our mantra is serve more and serve better. And as long as we're doing those two things, we're going to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, that's great. I want to come back to that in just a second, specifically how you ensure that you're fostering innovation and, the sort of entrepreneurial spirit while also maintaining controls over the proper, from a liability standpoint and just from a, like you said, non-negotiable standpoint. But one quick question, it occurs to me that there's probably a pretty careful balance that you guys have to strike if you're going to sort of go all the way through, right? Where you're potentially talking with a partner or a client about developing a facility or a space. And as part of that, I would imagine that there, like you mentioned, pro formas and you're estimating the impact that it could have on the entity or community or municipality, whatever it is. And then once you get towards sort of the operating side of things, you're obviously wanting to fulfill sort of the promises that you made, sort of, for lack of a better way of putting it, like, during the sales process, right? And so is there, tell me, talk about that sort of, I don't want to say conflict, because it's not, right? I mean, but how are you, is your sales team sort of out pitching what the operations team or the management team can actually deliver? And how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's very much the case. So whenever a business development team member's out there building a relationship, before we sign any agreement, we make sure that we've identified who the lead is on the operations side, and they're hand in glove, if you will.
Gotcha.
As we move forward, it's really important that we have. Well, look, here are our 4 values. Accountability is number 1. So it's the first value of our 4: collaboration, excellence, and service. But we think accountability is a beautiful word, and we want to be accountable, and we want to be given the opportunities and the tools to make sure that we are. So that's how we balance it. We talk about it a lot. As passionate as we are about the mission and the impact that we get to make, the margin piece of it is critically important. And we talk about financials a lot, and being innovative and entrepreneurial, and making sure that we foster a spirit of business development, not just operations, is something that we talk about a lot, to make sure that we drive the performance that we promise.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And as I think about it more, I actually think it would probably be easier if you're the company that's going to be having to deliver on that, the estimates and pro formas. Like, you're not in a position to do sort of a bait and switch, right? Like, oh, you build this thing and you'll make $10 zillion, right? So actually, the more I think about it, it actually probably aligns you guys better if you're doing, developing, building, and then managing, because you got to sort of, you got to answer for what you sort of put in the pitch at the beginning. So
that's exactly right. I joke that anybody can put a number in a spreadsheet, right? Anybody can enron a spreadsheet, but you've got to be able to deliver. And the nice thing early on, we didn't have as much of a track record as we're putting those financials together, but now we've got, hundreds of venues that we can point to show the impact, the performance that they make. And as I shared with you earlier, our vision is to develop and manage the highest performing venues in the country. And highest performing isn't just financial performance, although that's part of it. And we've got a pretty good track record that we can point to now.
Yeah. Well, look, the growth speaks for itself. You're obviously doing something very, very well.
Oh.
I guess you're doing everything very, very well, or else you wouldn't be where you are. So give the audience an idea of sort of the size of where you guys are now. From 2003, which was 3 people.
Yeah.
How many folks do you guys have now?
2,700 around the country. We've worked in almost 3,000 communities. Some just studies, right, helping them figure out what the right thing is. We had 30 million guest visits in our venues that we manage or are affiliated with last year. As I mentioned, presently we've got 80 that we're evaluating. We've got another 21 that are in the design construction, framework, and then 100 plus that we're, managing around the country in different areas at this point. So, it's fun. It's really fun, and to get to see the impact and then partner with these communities to serve well it's the best.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and congratulations. That's a heck of a growth trajectory. So when you guys were putting the business together, right? You ultimately had I'm going to make some assumptions here, but I would assume you had a pretty good idea of sort of what you wanted it to be, what you wanted it to stand for, the type of culture that you wanted, the type of people that the type of company that you really wanted to be.
Yeah.
Right? Now you have 2,700 people spread across the country. How do you try to keep your company and all 2,700 of those people to the same sort of standards and same vision that you had when you first started it?
Well, it starts with the recruiting process, right? When we're interviewing people, and the one question that I make sure that we ask every team member coming on is, what has sport meant to you, right? And what we look for is that passion and tied to the mission, because this isn't a 9 to 5, sort of job. These facilities are open on weekends. They're busiest on weekends and holidays, right? And during the summer months, oftentimes. So it is a lifestyle job, if you will. And we want to make sure that passion exists, because there's a difference between having a responsibility to do something contractually, and yet we certainly have that, based on our agreements. There's a difference between that and having passion, for what you're doing. And then there's a difference. And so we need that passion. But then there's a difference between having a burden, for the outcome. And that's a whole nother level. And that's what when we see that, and they have that burden for making that impact for that youth or for that adult that needs the healthy lifestyle or loves the healthy lifestyle, boom, that's it. So to your question then, so it starts with the hiring process and making sure that connection is there. And then the truth is, we work hard. We work really hard, and there's a work ethic that comes along with it, which is tough to decipher in an interviewing process.
Sure.
But it manifests itself pretty quickly in the onboarding process. And so we're not looking to weed people out by any stretch, but it's pretty obvious. And I've got a lot of scars from holding on too long to a relationship that just wasn't a great fit. And I don't mean to be calloused by that. But you just don't have time, we have too big an impact and too big opportunity to babysit that sort of relationship. And so our team is empowered. The leaders are empowered to make that move, if necessary, pretty quickly and in a way that's, respectful. And so we look that way. But then during the onboarding process, certainly for our leaders in the venues, and certainly anybody here in the support center, which is in Tampa Bay, we go through an onboarding, formal 3-day onboarding process, where we really drive in on the culture and the values and why we do what we do. And then, certainly the skills that go along with that particular job function. And I make sure that I'm involved in every one of those onboardings to talk about history, mission, and values. That's it. History, mission, values. We got smarter people than me and everything else that we do. Certainly people actually in the history, mission, and values, but I want to make sure I'm involved in that part. And so for that hour, I get to talk and engage and have a conversation around why we do what we do, what's important to us, what's negotiable, what's non-negotiable, what do we strongly suggest, and then what's a personal preference and up to you, right?
Yeah.
In that. But those non-negotiables are non-negotiable. And they know what they're signing up for at that point in time. And then when we utilize the values and some of the models that we use, it's not punitive in any way. It's a reminder, and let's have the conversation. But look, we learned that the hard way, to your point, as we scaled and grew. I can remember the couple of years in which I was not as manic about culture, history, mission, and values. And I can look back during those years and I can see the challenges that, resulted from that. And it takes years to come back from those mistakes, right, that you make organizationally. And so now at least we've fixed those, and we can be on to the other mistakes we're making as we grow.
Yep. Well, mistakes is just an opportunity to get better, right?
That's right. Amen.
Yeah. So you mentioned a word that I think is critical for entrepreneurs, and it's also something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and it's empowerment. A lot of entrepreneurs, as they grow and their businesses start to scale, it can be really, really, really difficult to let go and to trust and empower their team members to make decisions, and to do things on behalf of the company. Has that been something that you've had to learn? Is that something that comes naturally, or has it been a struggle?
All of them.
Yes.
All of them. Yes, for sure. And I can give you a lot of examples, but I think anybody who's honest has, had to work and evolve and learn. but you can't scale without working yourself out of a job. And early on, when there were three of us, we talked about how am I going to work myself out of this job and this role. And I remember one of the first weekends when we made a go of this. My wife and I are in the little apartment that we made into an office, and I'm stuffing mailers right at that point in time. And you just look back and you're and I'm fond and I'm grateful for all of that. Obviously, that's not a problem to empower somebody else to do. The ones that are, for me historically has been engaging with our client and having the strategic relationship and then getting to report and be accountable to all of that. I love that responsibility and that accountability. And I do have a burden for making sure we accomplish the goals and the objectives. That's something that I've had to give up, as my role has evolved and the responsibilities that I have toward the organization has changed. And that part was hard for me. And when you think about marketing as an example and getting to be the voice of the organization out in the marketplace, that's hard to give up. And I'll say this, it is so rewarding when the people who are better than you step in, and marketing is a great example for us. Our senior vice president, and she's a partner in the firm because she's earned it, Ashley Whitaker, has come in and just taken us to an entire another level, both in our voice to the industry and to the market, but also how we're leading the marketing initiatives for our clients as well. And she was just by our Sports Tourism and Events Association just named her the Woman of the Year this last year. And that's more rewarding than anything that I ever could have done. And so when your team gets the accolades they deserve because they're that good, it's easy to empower others, right? So that's what's exciting and rewarding is when your team members develop and get the professional accolades that they deserve and put the time in, and you get to celebrate them. That part's easy to provide that empowerment.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, I'm going to skip a bunch of questions I have to jump to a couple that I've been really wanting to ask, and then we'll wrap up. But you mentioned stuff in mailers, right? And early on. One of the things that entrepreneurs often struggle with is, they think about like, all right, the target market, right? My target market is huge. There's this sort of general hesitation, like, where do I even start, right? What's step one? Given that I imagine that your target market is pretty large, considering it could be municipalities, could be real estate developers. How did you, early on in particular, how did you focus in terms of where you were trying to market to before you sort of got the flywheel turning and had a real, big business going?
Yeah, well, I'm remiss to mention the names of my two co-founders, right? That we start, Dev Patik and Brian Finnerty.
Okay.
Dev, just a brilliant marketing brain, right? And he had his own target market model that he brought to the table.
Gotcha.
I just have learned a ton from him over the 20 years or so. So early on, we would get in a room, or we're in Florida, we'd go for a walk, because the phones weren't ringing. We put everything out that we knew how to, and you kind of you wait. We built some inbound systems, at that point, and so during those years, we identified the unsophistication in the marketplace and the problem that we thought we could solve.
Gotcha.
And we were pretty clear in our thesis on that. And then we put the marketing material out, inclusive of a digital presence, through website and whatnot. And in today's day and age, social channels and all of those things, the flyers, the mailers, all of that. And it was a numbers game for us. We learned and we sharpened it and focused it in. But if we put this many out there, what percentage, and it was very small, did we expect to come back, to us with an interest? And then we built a pretty detailed sales funnel and channel to bring it in. And, at that point in time, you take on some clients, at least we did then, obviously with all sincerity, and that we wouldn't take on today, but at the time we thought it was right. And, at times you're a little bit opportunistic, as well.
Sure.
And I do believe in the say yes mentality. Now it's a little bit different when you're bigger now, because you need to focus and have some discipline in focusing in on the thing, what you are. But that at that point in time, we said yes to a lot of things and we learned things. And then that allowed us to, carve it down.
Yeah.
Today's day and age, we subscribe to the Warren Buffett 525 rule. And that is, hey, here, what are the 25 things you want to do? Rank them 1 through 25. Put a line under number 5. Forget about 6 through 25. Focus on 1 through 5. Once you cross something off, the next thing can come up, because there's just so much opportunity out there. But back then, we were pretty opportunistic. We tried to stay nimble, entrepreneurial, say yes, learn from it, move on, and serve more and serve better.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. That's a really, really a good overview that a young entrepreneur could learn a lot from in terms of a methodical, disciplined approach to sort of start wide, learn from the feedback from the market, say yes to some things that maybe you weren't anticipating, be opportunistic, and then become more agile and learn sort of who you are as you make your way through the market. I think that's really, really interesting and excellent feedback, or excellent answer, frankly, to that question. Well, so all right, and then one more. So we get two. I think we got time for 2 more questions.
Yeah.
So now, right? Like you guys obviously you've grown a lot. You've learned a ton of lessons. You figured out who you are, who you aren't, what you're really, really good at. I imagine that you have, like any business, you've got some pretty big, hairy, audacious goals out there.
Yeah.
What is it what's your biggest challenge to reaching the big goals that you guys want to get or want to achieve?
We believe that the key to growth for us and achieving our mission, improving the health and economic vitality of the communities we serve, is in our management service. That's where we want to grow. We're closest to the guest. We're closest to the impact. We have influence over the programming and activity happening, and we can drive the profitability in the venue there. So management is where it's at, for us.
Gotcha.
That's the focus. And we do have some BHAGs out there in terms of where we want to be, how many we want, venue types, number of guests served, economic impact globally that we want to make. The truth is we believe in improving the health and economic vitality of our country. And we get to do that one community and facility at a time. But when you stitch it all together, we're really fired up about it. I heard a quote recently. Sorry, I'm a little off topic, but most people overestimate what they can do in a month or a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And so trying to think about, the impact that can be made in 10 years from managing these places and serving these kids and these guests, it's extraordinary. So the biggest challenge to that for us at this point in time is that most communities and municipal governments, which is really our key constituent here, don't even know that we exist still, and that outsourced management of these venue types are even an option. Last year we believe that 30 management agreements, that's all, were signed in this way with municipal governments, and
industry-wide.
Yep, industry-wide.
Okay.
And we signed 20 of them. And this year and through Q1, it's on pace to double. And so a lot of our challenge is just educating the marketplace that this service exists and that we're out here and that it's beneficial to your community. And here are the outcomes that can happen.
Gotcha.
So that's one of probably the biggest barrier to growth, for us. And, we're up for it.
No, that's great. That's great. And I'm glad I asked that question. So hopefully this podcast can help get that word out there, right?
Yeah.
We can, because look, even I wasn't, I didn't truly understand sort of how this industry worked. And frankly, you're in a way, you're kind of building an industry, right? I mean, if only 30 of these across the country were signed and 20, you're really sort of you're creating this industry in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned something that was really impactful to me, just in terms of the BHAGs you guys have or different goals. You may already do this, but I think it'd be fascinated to think about your business in terms of the number of potential lives that you've changed, right? Because maybe there was a kid that, was invited to go hang out with some, kids maybe that were up to no good, but instead chose to go play basketball or go do some type of event that was organized at one of your facilities, and that, who knows, that one day may change the course of that that kid's life, and it's got to be inspiring to know that you're providing, a significant impact sort of to the social fabric of these communities, and giving an outlet for kids that, like you said, maybe especially for those that don't have a father figure in the home.
It's incredibly gratifying, and that's a great thought on how we quantify the potential, right? And no one knows exactly the impact, but we know it's positive. Dev Patik, one of my partners and co-founders, you remember the Sports Illustrated Faces in the Crowd? Part. We think about that, like what are the what's the face in the crowd out there that's being impacted as a result that we don't even know, but we're going to show up every day and we're going to serve well. We're going to serve everybody. And, we'll let the chips fall where they may in terms of the opportunity for that person, adult or child.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I know you got to run. So final question, Jason, if you had a chance to go back and you had a chance to rewind the clock back to 2002, and you were you had 5 minutes with yourself, and said, "Listen, from the future, I could tell you. I got 1 minute. I'm going to tell you this one thing. I need you to know." What would you tell yourself beginning of this big journey?
Man, that's a great question. What comes to mind right away is the value of compounding interest. And I don't mean that financially, although that's important. I mean that in the investment of time, and where you spend your time. And I don't think I've wasted, a lot of time. I tend to think that I work pretty hard and I'm pretty efficient in that way. But in all aspects of life, time and the time you put in, working out, right? Your fitness, obviously the financial compounding interest that comes with that, the investment you make in relationships, friends, family, faith, all of those things, when you stick with it and you're consistent and you're disciplined in that way, again, it kind of gets back to the, what you can accomplish in 10 years versus the 1 year quote. It's extraordinary. So, I mean, that's really the first thing that comes to mind is, the value of compound interest, not just financially, but in terms of time and the priorities that you want. And be intentional about it. Those are lessons that have been learned, and I'm still learning every day.
I love that. I love that. That's fantastic. All right. Well, I don't want to make you late for your next meeting. So, we can end it there. I cannot thank you enough for taking an hour, and it's my hope is that this podcast is going to go to the eyeballs and ears of municipalities and communities across the country, to open their eyes to this opportunity that you can provide to them.
Well, thank you for that. Thanks for taking some time with me, and I hope it's valuable for you. I'm not sure it is.
Oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
No.
Good.
Fantastic. Look, there are so many people, Jason, that are hungry and ambitious and would love to build a business like you have. And so the opportunity to hear, just even for a few minutes, some thoughts or reflections is really beneficial for those types of people. So yeah, I mean, this was phenomenally helpful, and you were an excellent guest. So thank you.
Well, anytime. And if I can be supportive in any other way, let me know. And I'm really grateful for what you do. I mean, small business, entrepreneurial, it's the backbone of our country. It feels like a cliche thing to say, but it's the truth. And what you're doing to help inspire and educate, engage and empower, young or frankly, older entrepreneurs that have never been willing to take the leap. I'm
Amen.
Grateful for. So thank you. Thanks for letting me participate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't forget, everybody, you can find Boundary Breakers in a lot of places. You can watch our episodes on the Boundary Breakers YouTube channel, or you can listen to each podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other major podcasting platforms. Thanks for listening.